So what makes you happy? I thought this might be an opportunity to have the shortest conversation we've ever had and just say very simply, the answer is puppies. And we could all walk out of here and leave. But then I talked to what were 3 different staff members over the course of this week, and all 3 staff members said, nope, we don't like dogs, which we have since let all 3 go, just so you know. But it made me realize it's going to be hard, and I thought to find something that just universally makes all people happy. So then I did just a 5-minute brainstorm exercise, just got out a notepad and been like, what makes me personally happy? Then we might have a lot of guests here today for Summerfest. I'm so glad you've joined us. This is an easy way to get to know each other a little better. And one of the first things that came to my mind was just a gratitude for it being July, because the best thing about July is you can say next month, college football is back. And there's little that makes me happy like watching College Game Day, that whole crew on Saturday mornings in the fall. Even though it does tend to be a little bit more of a divisive time for our church because we have a lot of different teams represented here, but I love that time of year. The second thing I wrote down was this. It was America's Got Talent. And if you're wondering or surprised by the fact that was second, I too am surprised that that was the second thing that I wrote down. I think the reason that I wrote that really quick was, one, I love stories. They share a lot of dramatic stories. I love watching people pursue their dreams and amazingly talented people that have worked really hard. They've got a lot of that. I think it's also a childhood thing for me because this show has been around 20 years now. And in middle school, we would go, my brother and I, spend the night at Grandma's house, and she would have recorded America's Got Talent. And so we would go and we would watch this together. And today will have YouTube recommend videos for me. And the algorithm knows me better than I know myself. And it's like, hey, do you want to process some of your childhood together? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that for 5 minutes. And I'm watching, and in slow motion, the judges are like leaning forward, like about to hit the golden buzzer. And I'm on the edge of my seat still, even though the title of the video is Most Incredible Golden Buzzer Moment. I'm still like, what's going to happen? All of these things. And I get so excited. And there's just something, I don't even know what happens if they get the golden buzzer. I don't know if anybody does. I think you skip 1 round or something. But some of those kind of moments, the rush. I think today, very simply in my life, especially on a Saturday afternoon, little makes me happier than when I open the Nanit app with the camera and see that Davis has gotten at least a 1-hour nap in. That just moment, that calm, that peace, there's nothing else that brings joy like that. And on the flip side, there's little that is more terrifying than when I open it up and it says he's been up for 34 minutes and he's not screaming. I'd almost rather him wake up and yell when he's just sitting in his crib. What is he thinking about? I'm a little psychopath in my home, just scheming. This is so terrifying to look at. But this, and not black and white, this is my family from Camp 75 this week. In all seriousness, there's little that makes me happier in life, especially, whether it's a good season or a difficult season, like going home, hugging these 2. This is Emily here on the right, my wife. This is Davis in the middle, which I don't know who was the first to decide that saying cheese would end up looking like a smile. He has a very sweet smile, but when he says cheese, like he is in this picture, he looks much more terrified. So that's what he's saying right there. But we're at a host home, and I just think in a big picture, what Matt just was up here celebrating is something that makes me happy whenever we're a part of a story bigger than ourselves, which is what happened this week. Not only did only 700 volunteers serve over 5,700 people, they also partnered with 12 different nonprofits in our community this week, just meeting tangible needs in our community. And I think any time we elevate and we sacrifice and we're a part of something bigger than ourselves, it's something that makes the list for me of what makes me happy. I don't know what makes the list for you, if there are small, silly things, if it's the deep, meaningful things, or something in between. But I do think every single one of us have theories about what it is that will make us happy. We all have ideas. We are all on a happiness quest. It is one of the core human felt needs. I think part of the problem is, though, that for a lot of us, we either have theories that don't work, we've been trying the same thing over and over again, and it hasn't been working, or we don't work our theories. We think we might actually know what the next steps would be to our happiness, but we're scared to change the status quo or the energy that it will take or the sacrifice that it will take, and so we don't move in that direction. Now, being confused on what will ultimately leave us happy is not all our fault. We live in a very confusing time where we are targeted so specifically with all kinds of different promises and ads that will change your life. I mean, we're just finishing not just Camp 75 week, but it was Prime Week where you just bought something that was 40% off that you didn't even know that you needed the day before. I mean, it's so specific now. I'm so past the point that believing our phones are listening to us. I think it's somehow programmed into my subconscious. they're getting more and more specific. I swear I'm getting ads like this on my phone now. Like, hi, Jordan, your second dream last night, the way you sneezed this morning, and your blood results suggest you need a grilled egg white sandwich by 8 a.m., right? Or you will die. Blink twice and we'll charge your card. Like, it's like this, like, it's getting so specific. I'm like, they're always watching me. But some of it is these promises that are always being sent to us. But I also think it's because we've built up these theories over time, sometimes from well-meaning people, friends, the culture we live in. At some point in your life, this was all of our belief. Just do what you want, when you want, with whom you want. Like, just do what makes you feel good at the end of the day, and you will be happy. Now, maybe that was your theory when you were 5, and your parents coached you out of that. Maybe that was your theory when you were 15 or in your college years, or maybe you're 60 years old, and this is still your theory. But at some point, you do this just with no restraints and no boundaries and no concern for anybody else, and you realize that this approach to happiness ultimately makes life more complicated in the long run, not more fulfilling. And so at some point along the way, we start to mature, whether that was 5 or 15 or 60, and we start to experiment with delayed gratification. We start saying no to some things. We start saying yes to some difficult things in order that we can get the greater reward later on, and this is good. This is wonderful, this is maturing, this is biblical, there's nothing wrong with this, but there is something sneaky about this when it comes to our conversation, where you can just keep moving the goalpost. There's this subtle promise that if I was just a little bit more disciplined, if I work a little bit harder, if I was a little bit fitter, if I had a little bit more money, a few more friends, like there's some future set of circumstances, if I work for it, that ultimately I can be happier later on than I am today because the circumstances around me have changed. So this is more promising, but still there's more to the conversation than this. In fact, there's actually a term for this. Maybe some of you have heard of it before. It's called the hedonic treadmill. It's from a study in the 1970s where they examined 2 groups of people that had just won the lottery and people that had just gone through a traumatic physical injury, had become paraplegics. And they looked at these 2 groups of people and they said within months of one another, both sides reverted back to the same base level of happiness, which is not what they expected to find. But it's what you experience oftentimes as you go through life, that we have these good events, good things happen in our life, and we get a promotion, or we finally move, or a bigger job, or we start dating somebody, or whatever it might be, and there's a spike in happiness for a short term. Or one of our fears happens in life, a difficulty happens in life, a consequence comes our way, and there's a dip in happiness for a while. But over time, we keep returning to kind of the same base level happiness. It's like the iPhone effect for me. I don't know what it would be for you. I don't think it's new shoes, whatever it is. I get that new iPhone, and for like a few days, I'm like washing all of the fingerprints off of it. Sometimes I just put it on my desk and I just stare at it, which I really don't know what that says about me or what's broken inside of me, but it's like so beautiful. And then within a month, you're like throwing it into the bottom of your car, like you don't care. It's just a normal like object again. There's that base level that we revert to. What's much more difficult for us to figure out is not to have a spike or a dip in happiness, but how to move that base level up. How is it that we actually move like our foundational level of happiness that we revert to? How do we impact that? That has proved much more elusive and much more deceptive to people over time. See, this is why at some point we look at all the cultural messages that are sent to us and we get tired of being on the treadmill and we want to try something different. Because we start to realize a lot of these cultural messages, while promising on the surface, they just don't work. It's any number of these. Maybe you've heard these. Maybe you've like given this advice to somebody else before, well-intentioned. Do what feels good. I mean, we just talked about that, how that makes life more complicated. Prioritize yourself. Like in the most comfortable culture that's ever existed, with more self-care opportunities than there ever has been, we actually have more stress and more anxiety than there's ever been. Happiness in our culture equals more success, more stuff, more titles, whatever it might be, just an increase, more experiences. We think we need to change our circumstances. The grass is always greener, and thus the goalposts are always moving. We think pain and happiness are incompatible in our culture, so we want to numb, or we want to not feel some of the difficult, the emotions of life, but instead we just kind of want this status quo of comfort. We think happiness is a mindset, and there's some value in that, but it's the idea that just, I don't have to change anything around me or deal with anything in my past. I can just choose happiness, and there's something wrong with me if I can't just decide to be happy. And we're told a lot, you don't need anyone but you. We're creatures that are designed for connection, designed for a healthy relationship, and yet we're told a lot, you can just go find this on your own. And at some point in time, we've all lived enough life to realize this is wanting. Whether you can be a little bit more happy or you recognize there's a big gap for you. a lot of us, what we do next is we explore religion. That's why a lot of people start showing up to church. We realize there's something missing in my life. There's some gap, meaning, purpose, lonely. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to be a better version of myself. And so we try out religion. And it doesn't have to mean just a church. It might be our own set of rules, our own set of disciplines that we set for ourselves. It could be a different faith. It certainly exists in church world as well, that there's kind of this roadmap where we walk into a religious atmosphere and there's kind of spoken or maybe unspoken culture that happiness is selfish. Like maybe this is your first time to North Point and you're like, ooh, even the title of the series made me a little bit uncomfortable. This is one of those more kind of new age environments where you're just going to focus all on yourself. I don't even like the conversation. Can you talk about that in church? We think there's this picture of like suppress and sacrifice and behave, like no fun, no joy, no silliness. We think holiness is more important than happiness, or somehow the two like contradict each other, that if you're in line with God's will for your life, then you won't also be happy at the same time. We think we need to work hard to make God happy, as if somehow our effort and our good behavior is going to, affect his well-being in the sky. We think real faith is often heavy, serious, stoic, unemotional, but not fun, not joyful, not happy. And we have a whole different set of conversations and a whole set of different barriers. Oftentimes we get to a point where neither one of these are working and we wonder, where is it that we look? There's a book that I was reading in preparation for this series. It is very creatively titled Happiness. It's written by a man named Randy Alcorn, and I really like a lot of his works because of what he writes about. His two best-known books are Heaven and Happiness. So he's a joyful guy. He spends his time researching and thinking about what the Bible has to say about a lot of wonderful things in life, and he says there are just so many misconceptions worked into the modern church and modern Christianity when it comes to happiness, because he says fundamentally we have a happy God, the one who has invented joy and rejoicing and gladness. He has designed us to be happy when we're in connection and relationship with him. He makes the argument that the happiest human that has ever lived is the person of Jesus. He says we make these weird distinctions between joy and happiness. He says they're synonymous. You're not joyful and not happy, that they go together, and God desires us to be happy. And then he goes through, towards the beginning, this kind of long history of the faith where he's like, man, this isn't just a 2025 thing. This isn't just America in modern day. This is as long as there has been a Christian faith, people have been on this happiness quest together. I mean, you can just go back 100 years at a time and find somebody speaking on it. You go back to the 1900s, and C.S. Lewis is saying it is a Christian duty for everyone to be as happy as he can. You go back 100 years before that, and the most influential preacher of the 1800s, Charles Spurgeon, says man was not originally made to mourn, he was made to rejoice. The Garden of Eden was his happy abode, and as long as he continued in obedience to God, nothing grew in that garden that could cause him sorrow. God made human beings as he made his other creatures to be happy. They're in their right element when they are happy. You look at the founding fathers of our country, and what they decided was that our Creator had given us three unalienable rights. He says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator. You've heard these words with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, freedom or liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. 100 years before that, before our country was even around, it was the Puritan preacher Thomas Watson. He said he has no design upon us but to make us happy. Who should be cheerful if not the people of God? We could just keep going and keep going and keep going. If you skip to the year 300, to the church fathers, you see St. Augustine say, every man, whatsoever his condition, desires to be happy. We are all on a happiness quest, but we are confused on the roadmap to get to where it is that we want to be. And so to start off a brand new series, a brand new conversation, what I would like to look at is a third alternative. And it's an alternative offered to us by the person of Jesus that I think flips both approaches upside down. He offers a specific happiness formula that flips both the world's and religion's approach to happiness upside down. Like literally gives us a roadmap, could not be more clear and straightforward. And yet, if I was to ask any of us 2,000 years later, what makes you happy, very little of what we probably put on our list would be on the list that he gave us. He specifically delivers this list in what's called the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount, just objectively, like from a historian's perspective, not just a Christian or preacher's perspective, is the most influential speech, the most influential sermon the world has ever known. It has impacted every single faith system that has come after it. It has impacted every law that has come after it, morality where we live, so much of what we think is normal human decency where we live. We would not have thought 2,000 years ago. What Jesus said was so ahead of his time, was so abnormal, was not seen anywhere else, that people will study this and believe he is who he claimed to be because of his words and consistency in these 3 chapters of Matthew 5, 6, and 7, where he delivers the Sermon on the Mount, because it holds so true and relevant 2,000 years later in a completely different culture. And the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount starts this way. It says he gathered with the crowds. It says when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. There were probably thousands in the crowd. The way that this mountain was on the side of the Sea of Galilee, it's like his voice would echo through the crowds. And do you know the very first word of the most important sermon, the most important speech the world has ever known? The very first word is blessed. Blessed literally means, this isn't like one loose translation. The definition of blessed, the Greek word makarios, is happy or fortunate. To bless someone else is to do goodwill for them, to cause them good fortune or cause them to be happy. It is the first word that he starts with. Let me, as an introduction, give you a roadmap of what authentic joy, meaning, purpose looks like, what real happiness looks like. And he gives us a list. And it's probably not the list that we would have guessed. He starts this way. He says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Which you'd be like, wait, I thought we're in church. I thought the point is to be rich in spirit, like full of the Spirit. Why would that be the starting point? He's saying rich are the poor in spirit, meaning happy are those who recognize their need for or their dependence on God. This is the starting point of happiness. If you believe that the world rests on your shoulders, if you need to control all outcomes in your life, if you're responsible for all failures and all things that go wrong, if you need to be prepared for every new season of life that you've never been through before, you've never been through this season of marriage, you've never parented here, you've never been in that job, but you need to be capable, it's all on you, you need to have the ability to fix you and to control those around you, you will not be happy. But to have a proper perspective of self, made in the image of your Creator, that he desires a relationship with you, that he is God and you are not, and you are daily dependent on him, and you recognize your need for him in humility, is the starting point for genuine happiness, for the baseline moving northward. In the next verse, in 4, he says another thing that is completely opposite of what we would guess. He says, blessed, happy are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I mean, could you imagine as you're going through and you're getting all your targeted ads and all of the eating plans and all of the workout plans and all of the products that will make you happy, if you came across a targeted ad that looked like this: hey, join Mourn Well, haven't cried in a while. You might be missing out. We can help. A daily cry for $4.99 a month. You've never seen something targeted like this before, even though it is second on Jesus' list of things that will make you happy. Why? Well, what do you have to do to mourn? You have to be alive. You have to have a heartbeat. You have to be alive emotionally. To mourn, you have to have things in your life that you value, that are important to you, that you fight for. Meaning there are things in the world that you recognize have gone wrong and should not be, and you mourn that. You mourn when you are hurt. You mourn when you experience loss. You mourn when you see injustice in the world around you. And so often in our comfort culture, we try to numb, we try to pretend like everything's okay, we do the whole toxic positivity, and we ignore the bad feelings, and we stuff that down, and we lived a numbed out life where we don't experience real joy and real satisfaction because we never grieved. We haven't healed. We haven't gone through a season, a human season we were designed for, which is to mourn. Second on his list. He continues in verse 5, and he says, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. How many dads in here are like, man, one day I hope my daughter just marries a meek man? Where have all the meek men gone, right? If you're like dating, is this high on your profile of like, this is what I'm looking for, right? Like, to us, this sounds like weakness. This word meek is used 3 times in the New Testament. It's used here, and it's used 2 other times, both times describing the heart and character of Jesus. In fact, Matthew 11 is the only time in the Gospels that we see Jesus describe his own heart, and he uses the same word. In Matthew 11, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle." That word gentle is the same word in the Greek. You could have said meek there. They just translated gentle here. "For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." There's one author who said the proper imagery for this word is much more like a bridled horse, to say power and speed and strength under control. Happy people are not people who walk into the room and demand attention, that are constantly trying to prove themselves to others why they're worth it, or smart enough, or strong enough, or look at me. Happiness is power under control. It's proper humility. I could act, I could show up, I could show them wrong. I just don't know that I need to do that. I don't need to, in this moment, use my voice. And they act in the right moments. They stand up and protect in the proper moments, when they're needed, when they're valued. It's a proper, humble perspective of self. And Jesus himself defines himself as meek. Happy, in verse 7, are those who, or in verse 6, are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Speaking to a culture, an audience that truly didn't know where their next meal was coming from most of the time. They would have really connected with this in a physical way. If you've ever fasted before, maybe you've experienced that. When those hunger pains start, it's really all you can think about. It's got a distraction to everything that you're doing. He's saying when you want righteousness to that degree, there's a unique kind of happiness there. Why? Well, at least two reasons. One, it gives you a North Star. It gives you a meaning and a way to aim upward in life, something that you go protect, that you fight for, that you use your voice and influence for when you fight for what is right. But two, you also sleep better at night. There's a righteousness involved when you don't have to be concerned about the story that you're trying to keep together, the lies that you are telling, but when you live with integrity, there's a peace, a happiness, a joy that comes along with hunger and thirsting for righteousness. In verse 7, he says, "Blessed or happy are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." Have you ever met a happy, bitter person? Somebody who's just constantly complaining about their ex or their boss or their current spouse or whatever it might be. Have you ever met somebody who's like, man, that's just a really happy person? Blessed are the merciful, because one, when you are merciful to others, there's just a practical people are more likely to extend grace to you as well. They're just going to treat you that way. If you're in a household that doesn't extend mercy to one another, it's not a happy household, right? As well as when you lean into mercy, what you're doing is you're leaning into the mercy that your Heavenly Father has already extended to you. That's how we pass that on to others, is we recognize what it is he's extended to us. We get to know him and his heart better, and that's how it flows through us to those around us. It says in verse 8, "Blessed or happy are the pure in heart, for they will see God." This may be one of the most amazing promises, right? For you will see God. Imagine getting in a car and maybe it's outside early in the morning and it's all fogged up, or maybe you've lived in a cold climate and you've got ice in your windows, and you could be in a beautiful place, right? You could be in the mountains, you could be right along the beach, you could be wherever it is, but if you can't see out your windows, it really doesn't matter because you can't see through. He says our heart can be like that because it can be clouded, it can be murky by envy, by jealousy, by bitterness, by rage, by selfishness, right? There are all kinds of things that can get in the way of our hearts. And the reason it's difficult to see God is because that's not who God is. That's not his character. And the longer we gaze upon who he actually is, the more those things are healed inside of us and replaced with who God really is, and we see him more clearly. And we see others made in his image more clearly as we grow in this purity of heart connected to him. In 9, he says, "Happy are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Meaning apparently there's a link between the DNA of God, your identity, and peacemaking, because God created peace with us by sending his son on the cross for us to be reconciled to us. Not just people who love peace, right? I think we'd all raise our hand and say, yes, world peace. This is the idea to say, hey, no, you actively make peace happen in your spheres of influence. You believe the best about others. You fight for trust. You fight to forgive. You fight to reconcile. You don't spread drama or gossip or rumors. And it doesn't count if you just give it one little caveat of not to spread drama, but no, that's still doing the same thing, right? When we do that, that breaks down relationship, that breaks down barriers, that breaks down trust with people. And he says those people are not happy. Happy people are the ones who are secure enough in themselves to fight for relationship, fight for peace with others, to love people as God has first loved us. In verse 10, he says just a really interesting one. It's less relatable for the part of the world where we live in, but some of the most meaningful words ever spoken based on where you live, even on our planet today. He says, blessed or happy are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We're not persecuted in the United States of America for our faith. People might judge you for your faith or think weird or not invite you to something or make assumptions, but we do that about all kinds of people that we don't understand or don't think the way we think. This is not to the extreme today, to the audience that he was talking about, people who would lose their lives for their faith. And still, it is an encouragement to us that if it causes you to live different, to trust Jesus with your life, if it makes it a little bit more complex in your place of work or in your family or in your friend groups to stand up for, to commit to your faith, it's an encouragement that God sees it, that God blesses it, and there's a unique kind of peace and comfort that goes with that. He actually doubles down in the next verse. He says, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Look at this. Rejoice and be glad. Be happy. Experience happiness because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Meaning those that have gone before you, those that have tried to follow me before you, those who have focused on their relationship with God, they've experienced that same kind of weight that you carry. There's a scene in the show called The Chosen. Some of you are familiar with that. I've struggled with a lot of Christian media over time. It's just a brokenness inside of me, but I've connected with this series. And there's a whole episode devoted to Jesus' preparation of the Sermon on the Mount, of just writing this, which as a preacher, I kind of like to watch Jesus a little bit stressed, writing his sermon and all that kind of stuff. It was fun to watch. But he's working with Matthew on it. And he goes to Matthew, and he, at this moment early in the morning, wakes him up, and he's like, I've got it. I've got the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. I know how I want to start it. And he says, I've got the opening. It's a map, directions where people should look to find me. If someone wants to find me, those are the groups they should look for. To clarify, that is Hollywood Jesus, not the real Jesus, okay? So it's some creative liberty. But I like what they're suggesting here, because he's saying, hey, this isn't just a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps that you need to now go work hard on and do. This represents my heart. And as you grow in relationship with me, you will experience these things on this list. It's kind of the litmus test, if you will, of growing in a relationship with me. You will find me, find my heart represented there in those groups of people that are living this out. Meaning it's not a map like a destination, like you can go there, like the grass is greener, like at some point in the future. It's not something to be found, if you will. It's formed. It's formed through daily relationship with, daily obedience to, daily growing in a relationship with Jesus over time. Which the encouraging news is it's available to every single one of us, regardless of our story, our resources, our circumstances. The difficult news is it probably doesn't happen overnight. That baseline doesn't move overnight. It's formed over a lifetime of faithfulness with Jesus. Specifically, I would say if you were to summarize all of those Beatitudes together, happiness is formed through peace with these three vital relationships: God, others, and yourself. He talks about each of those in there, right? A proper perspective of God, a proper perspective of self, and through that, a proper perspective of a loving of, a fighting for peace with others, which changes the whole conversation and the whole list when we think about the list of things that ultimately make us happy. We simplify it and go back and look at, man, is there anything that is disrupting the peace in those vital relationships? Here's the whole list if you've just never seen it in that order before. He says happy, blessed. Some translations, like the NLT, truly translate it happy. Happy are the poor in spirit, mourners, meek, merciful, pure in heart, peacemakers, and those who are persecuted. I just don't know how many of us would have shown up today and been like, yep, that's the list. That is the secret to happiness, to a full and meaningful life. I think about what just took place this week. I mean, if you could have been here on Thursday night, there were 550 students that were taking up this entire space. And the moment is so incredible, these night sessions when they come back and celebrate what happened throughout the day. We have 100 drivers who drove them around all day long and don't have to be here at this point and then just line the foyer just to kind of watch these moments and these celebrations and so on. 550 students that have been out in the sun all day. It was a water day. It smells like a science experiment. I am fully convinced some of your children have never showered in their life. But it is a moment. I mean, it is an experience, and there's such intense happiness, such intense joy. And you think about the microcosm of the week. It was students showing up, living for something bigger than themselves. The humility of these full-grown varsity football players that are singing songs about sticky waffles to elementary-age kids and just doing it shamelessly and having the humility to do that. People that are going outside of their comfort zone to meet strangers, to have conversations with people they've never met before, to go and serve these 12 nonprofits around our city, not knowing what that's going to look like, exhausting themselves, being on little sleep, like all the things that go into that. I think there's not drama with 550 students in a room. There is. But they fight for relationship and fight for unity, and how can we have a conversation about this, and how can we live for something bigger here? And you have all of these sacrifices, all this daily just depending on God, praying before every single camp together, and you get a taste of some of this idea of what we were made for, what we were made to step into, that we are better together, that we experience this in community together. The list of promises that go with each of those are this, and I think this is some of what we were tasting this week. They will receive a full life, comfort, mercy, gladness, rejoicing, identity, and the kingdom of heaven. Those are the promises that Jesus says on the flip side of all of those different groups of people. So today, I just want to ask a couple of self-reflective questions to end our time. This is the beginning of a month-long series where we're going to get more practical. We're going to talk about different areas. We're going to talk about how this connects to our emotions. We're going to talk about some of the daily habits and rhythms, what it looks like to let go of control of some of this comparison. I mean, we're going to get practical as we go in and talk about how is this lived out over the course of the next month. But today, because it's a starting point, I just want to ask you a few questions that align with each of these statements that Jesus made. One of those would be, what would it look like to admit, even just to yourself, I can't fix this on my own? That's a poor in spirit question. I can't fix this relationship. I can't fix this marriage, this friendship, this thing with my parents. I can't fix this habit, this addiction I've been fighting. I can't fix the situation at work. I can't fix this mental struggle. I can't fix whatever this is on my own. Even if you just admit it to yourself, it's a starting point, a pathway to happiness, to recognize your dependence on a heavenly Father who is for you. Maybe the question for you that resonates is there something in your life you've never fully grieved? Is there a season of your life where pretending like it was no big deal and we're terrified to go back there, but as a result, we've just fallen into a lifetime of numbing, that we know we're not fully alive in some of the most important areas of our life, and there's genuine healing to take place? Is there something you've never fully mourned or grieved? That's the mourning question. What have you been feeding your soul with lately? This is a hunger and thirsting for righteousness question. And you don't even have to be a follower of Jesus to get what I mean by soul, right? I just mean, what are your inputs? Like, what are you doom scrolling? What is your source of news? What are your friends saying to you? Are they supporting your goals, your values? Are they supporting your relationship, supporting your marriage? Or are they always talking down against you or pulling you into things that you don't value? Like, what are you filling your inputs with, your soul with? What about this one? Has anything, anger, envy, comparison, cluttered your heart? When it comes to the idea of happy, blessed are those who are pure in heart, for they will see God clearly. Just what's been in your heart? What do you notice is coming out of you? What do you notice you react to? What do you notice you get big about or that you shrink from? Has anything cluttered your heart? Last question, think about being peacemakers. Are you doing anything that actively undermines your peace? It's workaholism, and you tell yourself you're changing a goal, but at the end of the day, you're missing the most important moments. You are disrupting your peace. You're chasing something, and the goalpost is just going to keep moving. Is there a way that you're going about relationships? Is there a way, a cycle you've had with dating, and you're like, man, it feels fun for a moment, but I know in the long run it is disrupting my peace? Is there a habit? Is there a secret? Is there something you need to know? You know you need to start or stop. Is there anything that is actively disrupting your peace? And the circumstances could change around you. You can get as much money as you want and be successful as you want in your career, but you know that peace disruptor is still going to be there. Bottom line again, happiness is not found as in a destination or the grass is greener. It's formed over a lifetime. It's formed with proper perspective of God's self and others. Peace with God, others, and yourself. and as you cultivate health and peace in each of those relationships, which is only possible because God allows it in his grace through us, we start to experience some of the real happiness we were made for. Like I said, it's going to be a long series over the course of this next month as we continue the idea of what makes you happy. I want to end our time just a little bit different today. We always pray at the end. I ask you to bow your head. I'm going to ask you to do exactly that if you're comfortable with it. But before we start praying together, I'm going to ask you just imagine a situation, a future, happier version of yourself, and just see what comes to mind for you, okay? So bow your heads with me like we're about to pray together. And if you would, just with your eyes closed, just picture the happiest version of you. I'm just curious what comes up. For some of you, based on your wiring, I mean, you can even feel it. You can feel it in your chest. You notice a little grin come across your face as you're sitting there with your eyes closed. What's different? What changed? For most of us, our gut reaction is the circumstances around us changed. That's the treadmill. That's the message we're sold. That's what we've been chasing. That's what we've been exhausted running on. My hope is over the course of this series, we have a different set of images come to our mind. The list that Jesus had for us. What it really means to be blessed. A proper view of God's self and others. An internal peace. A character that's aligned with him. A relationship, a closeness with him. A peace that's only made possible through him. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you that even in this moment, you're trying to reach our hearts. Even in this moment, you are a joyful, happy God that is for us, and because you love us, you desire what is best for us. You want us to find happiness in you, that lasting peace and joy that transcends. For some of us, we've never heard this before. This is all new. We've just been chasing the culture we've been growing up in. How could we do any different? For others of us, we're struggling to just experience this lived out in our life. I ask that you would meet us wherever we are in this journey. God, ultimately, hopefully one that lands with you in deeper relationship, more personal relationship with you and your son Jesus than ever before. God, we love you. We need you. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us on the Summerfest Sunday. We'll see you next week for part 2.